What is up? Welcome back to the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. It is Friday, July 28th. My name is Matt Hannafin. I'm here with Drew. Man, Drew, what's going on?
Nothing much, just another day talking sports. Can't complain. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. I mean, it's Friday. It's the end of the week. It's almost August, which is like crazy to think
It,
about.
it's scaring
Uh,
me. Yeah,
Felt like June and like summer just started yesterday, and now it's almost August.
right. Where did the
Um,
year go? Yeah.
yeah, and dude, that's just how summer goes, man. Like it's
hmm
just like what one day it's March, mid March, the leaves are springing, and then all of a sudden it's the leaves are changing colors. It's fall, it's football season.
Winter
Um,
feels like forever too. Yeah.
huh?
Winter feels like forever.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Well, it's the snow, it's the rain, it's the gloominess in the sky. That's
Yeah.
probably
I guess we just dread it, so it feels longer. Yeah. That makes sense.
but that's also like a funny like I don't want to say like an oxymoron because it's like the days are technically shorter
Yeah. Good
in,
point.
in
Good point.
winter.
It should feel like it's flying by, but
Right.
it just doesn't work that way.
Right. But that's enough of our meteorology for the day.
Yeah. This is a sports podcast.
Yeah. So I mean, we're gonna talk some NFL. We're gonna bounce around NFL, NBA. But first things first. I mean, training camp just got underway this week. It's unfortunate with training camp sometimes because it's like players get injured, and there was a couple injuries that have happened over the last couple of days. Really, just yesterday. Jalen Ramsey suffered a meniscus tear in practice. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Joe Burrow injured his calf. Well, what looked to be a pretty scary injury at first, but I think the prognosis came after that it was a strained calf. I don't know if there's been an official timetable released from his injury, but just a couple like very notable injuries. What were your thoughts, reactions? Like you have the floor.
Initially when I heard Joe Burrow got hurt, I was like, there goes the Bengals season. And then when you read into it a little more, you hear it's a little strain. He might take it easy for a little bit, but then I got to thinking a little more. When it's a player like Joe Burrow who's sort of unanimously liked, he's playing at the top of the league level right now. Obviously, it's going to get some attention if he even goes down in the slightest during some practice. I mean, the same thing goes for players like Patrick Mahomes. They get a little injury and it's going to make many headlines.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's I mean, well, with any player, at least any notable player with the stature of Joe Burrow, because I mean, Joe Burrow is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. He's led the Bengals to two AFC title appearances, one Super Bowl appearance, in really 3 seasons, and the one other season he didn't, he played 10 games because he tore his ACL midseason. That was as a rookie when he had a bad offensive line in front of him. But like when it's any big player of like again his stature, it's going to make headlines, especially like when you look at the video because the video was really released at the time of the injury, and it was like a non-contact. I'm rolling out of the pocket, running, and he just pulls up, and it's like you don't know. I mean, at least for me, because I'm not a doctor, but like you're looking at it from a distance, and it's like, okay, is this an ACL? Is this an MCL? Is this a meniscus? Like, what exactly is this? But then uh, Zach Taylor comes out after and says it's a calf injury, and it's like that's I don't want to say that's best case scenario because you'd never want a player to get hurt, but like in terms of those circumstances from what we saw in the video versus what actually came out after, it looks like it's probably best case scenario.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and whenever you hear someone get carted off in training camp, that's always like I want to say it was there was someone on Twitter, one of the like and like one like he was a doctor, but he does a lot of like NFL commentary on injuries. But he says it's common in training camp that people get carted off because they're more accessible during training camp than they are like during like in games in the regular season, which I thought was interesting. But it's still never you're not as a fan thinking like, oh, like that's supposed to be like that's common. Okay, like that's not what you're thinking. You're thinking usually the worst, whether it's like I get a torn MCL, a torn ACL, a meniscus, whatever the case is. And so that's kind of the impact of it. And again, I don't know how long Burrow is going to be out. I don't know if that's been officially disclosed yet. He's probably going to miss practice time, obviously, because of that
Mhm.
injury. And Zach Taylor also did reveal yesterday that he has been dealing with calf soreness. And so that's why he was wearing the brace. And that's, I guess, why he pulled up, because it was, I don't know if it was cramps or whatnot. And so I guess that's fortunate news for Bengals fans. And then with the Jalen Ramsey thing, obviously it's the same situation where he gets carted off mid-practice with an injury. And Dolphins fans are thinking the worst, because he's like, he was their prized free agent acquisition. He and Xavier Howard were supposed to be one of the best cornerback duos heading into the season. And then tears his meniscus, which isn't best case scenario, but he's supposed to miss, I think I saw 6 to 8 weeks, but the surgery will also be dependent on how much time he misses. Like I've seen, like, I don't remember the exact like ramifications of it, but like they're going to go through the surgery and see like, okay, or is he going to be able to make it back by like probably the start of the season, maybe probably like week 2, week 3, or is he going to have to miss the entire season or most of the season? And I think Mike McDaniel came out with something today that he's going to, that the best, like the most realistic is like an in-season return, which again, that can be anything. That could be week 5 to week 15. I don't remember if he said like an exact timetable. It's really hard when there's such a wide range of outcomes for at least the injury. So I guess that's an unfortunate situation for him. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so he also got carted off. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think he got carted off.
Yeah, I mean, it was another leg injury, so I mean, obviously he couldn't get off on his own power. That's not a good sign. But from the time span of 6 to 8 weeks, I'd say it's hopeful he'll still be able to play the majority of the season.
Right.
But still, missing games is something you don't want to do, because those early game seasons, let's say a couple games are lost due to Jalen Ramsey being out, then that could come back to bite them in the future. So you never want to see a player miss any time, period.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to pull up their schedule, but like they do have Vic Fangio. I think their defense will be better this season than it was last season. But at the same time, you're right. It could be a situation where it was like their secondary wasn't that good last year. They were having to rely on like Noah Igbinoghene, who just wasn't that good. And they had some just faults in the secondary, and that wasn't the ultimate reason for them going 9-8 or whatever the record was, because of like the Tua injuries midseason and how they were having to rely on, I believe, Teddy Bridgewater, who I believe he was their backup last season, if I can remember correctly. But like, they suffered some important injuries at important positions. And so the fact that they were able to still go 9-8, is still like somewhat of impressive. I just pulled up their schedule now. So they're at Chargers, at Patriots, home against Denver, at Buffalo, home against Giants. So that's a pretty tough first 5 games. If we're just using that as like a baseline, I don't know. Again, we don't really know how much time Jalen Ramsey's going to miss. We'll probably know within the next few weeks, like a better timetable of it. Maybe even longer than that, but at Chargers, home against Broncos, who again should be better this year with Sean Payton. Obviously, Bills on the road is tough, and like 3 of their first 4 games are on the road. I think the most feasible one is the Patriots, but the Patriots still have given them trouble in the past. And so, I mean, I think the Dolphins are still like very good against Mac Jones, but they've had battles, because it's just like that's just how the AFC East works. Sometimes they have their own battles. And then home against the Giants, who some predict might regress. Brian Daboll is a very coach. They added Darren Waller over the offseason, so who knows how that's going to factor into how they play. Andrew Thomas just got paid. He's probably the best left tackle in the league. And then they have home against Panthers, at Eagles, home against Patriots, at Chiefs. That's just not easy. And so that's a pretty rugged, at least first 9 games before their bye. And so, especially against pass-heavy offenses, like not pass-heavy offenses, but teams who like to throw the ball and who have good quarterbacks, like the Chargers, like the Bills, like the Broncos. No matter how you feel about Russell Wilson, I think he'll be better this year with Sean Payton. Daniel Jones was better last season. The Panthers with Bryce Young, I don't know how that's going to eventually pan out. I mean, he was named the starter earlier this week, but him with Frank Reich isn't a terrible combination. I don't know how he's going to fare as a rookie, but that's something to obviously monitor. They'll be without DJ Moore this year, and then obviously with Jalen Hurts, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and looking at the position matchups too, assuming Jalen Ramsey would guard their number one guys, that beginning of the schedule is not easy by any means. I mean, we saw Jalen versus Diggs last year, and it didn't go over so well. So it might be a rough start for the Dolphins defensively. I'm sure they'll still get it going on offense, but that's a void that is hard to replace.
It is. And again, if it's like he returns week 3 or week 4 or week 5 or whatever the case is, like, you still wonder, without really a training camp for him and without a preseason for him, how that's going to affect his mobility, him being able to stop on a dime against these number one guys. I mean, I don't know how Fangio, I don't know if he is going to just do like a man-to-man coverage, or if he's going to play that too high shell that I think that he had in Denver, where he's just going to stick Ramsey on one side of the field and see. But like, I'm not necessarily sure how he's going to game plan for that. But like, just from like a mobility, agility, being able to, like, again, change direction and stop. But like, I don't know how that's going to necessarily impact his performance in that respect. If he does return within the first couple of weeks, I mean, obviously assuming if he does return within a reasonable amount of time, that you assume he's healthy. But again, he hasn't had a training camp. He didn't have a preseason because of this injury. And so how is that going to, like, our team's going to target him more? Who knows? There's just a little questions to think about. Like, when is he going to look fully 100% if he is? Because, I mean, we know football by week 10, guys, no one's 100%. That's just how this league works. Heck, even by like week 3, week 4, guys are just beaten up all over the place. That's just how football is.
Yeah, that's why there's only 17 games.
Right. And even some consider 17 being too much. Like,
exactly. Yeah. Who knows? I mean, when Jalen Ramsey comes back, there really is no guarantee that he'll be 100%. And at his position, it is very essential to have quick planting feet like that. So he might not be as explosive and quick to hunting the ball down, but just got to hope for the best for him.
Right. A couple other storylines that happened this week. Sean Payton just apparently wants to, like, fight the entire Jets team. No, I'm just kidding. But he did throw jabs at them. He did throw jabs at the 2022 Broncos under Nathaniel Hackett. And by now, we all know that was a disaster. You could kind of tell. I mean, it's hard to make like a predetermined outcome week 1, but that Monday night game where he's refusing to call the timeout and they ultimately lose. I can't remember who that was against, but
what was it? You said it was week 1, right?
Yeah, it was week 1 Monday night. They had it was Seattle.
Seattle.
It was Seattle. It was the rematch against Seattle. And like, it's hard to make like a predetermined outcome, but like from that point on, it was just like, this is going to be a disaster. It ended up being a disaster. Sean Payton kind of ripped them to shreds. And he did make comments about like winning the offseason. Like, we're not going to do any of that like PR crap. I'm paraphrasing when I say that, but we're not going to do any of that PR crap. We're not going to try to win the offseason. And then he also just kind of threw the Jets under the bus. I don't know how much of that was due to Hackett being there now, or obviously they got Aaron Rodgers, they got Randall Cobb. They might get Dalvin Cook, which is like something that's been kind of floated about over the last probably 12 to 24 hours. And so like he said they're not going to, like, everything they did last year is going to be like the exact opposite of what they're doing this year, or at least everything that he heard them do last year. Billy Turner, who was I don't know if he was a guard or a tackle, but he offensive lineman nonetheless for the Broncos last year, is now with the Jets this year, and he had some pretty. He called Sean Payton an effing bum, among other things, on an Instagram story. So that's always cool when that beef kind of gets circulated from player to coach. That just random, not random, but it's just that's just always funny. But like, what are your thoughts on the entire situation?
I mean, okay, so Sean Payton, he has some room to talk because he has the accomplishments to show
Mhm.
for it. But then again, he's taking some time off. So if you're gonna talk all that talk, you got to be able to walk the walk. And I don't know what to expect from the Broncos. I want to say that they'll be better because they actually have a coach who I think can it, utilize his pieces the right way. But I mean, he he called them off-season champions, and I think he's not exactly wrong. But last season they were off-season champions too, and I think they showed improvement in the season. They went from one of the worst teams in the league to kind of scraping the playoffs. It's like they nearly made it. I think they finished third in the division, but yeah, I'd say he just has to back it up. That's all I'm saying. Otherwise, he's going to look like a doofus.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC West isn't very forgiving this year.
Mm,
Um, I mean, it isn't usually. I think it's probably more forgiving than it was heading into last season, but it's still not very forgiving in the respect that you are in Patrick Mahomes' division. Kellen Moore is now with the Chargers, and I think he'll improve. He's better than Joe Lombardi, and
mhm.
so I will think he will improve that offense. I think he will kind of help Justin Herbert in a way that Joe Lombardi didn't. Um, and so it's not very forgiving in that aspect, regardless of how you feel about. Sorry, Chickster, if you're watching this, but the Raiders, uh, with like Jimmy Garoppolo's now there, uh, Josh McDaniels, his track record as a head coach isn't good at all. They won like 5-6 games last year. I think they will I think they'll probably be around that mark again this season. I do think the Broncos will be better. I mean, we had fans were counting down pre-snap last year throughout the season about like every Bronco game, or at least every Bronco home game, like before it plays. I mean, also the Dolphins did that too with Mike McDaniel, but people, including myself, think Mike McDaniel's cool, so they gave him the benefit of the doubt. But it was just a lot of turmoil with the Broncos last season. Again, I don't know how much of that is just Nathaniel Hackett himself. I mean, Sean Payton didn't come out and say that. I think he used the word 20 hands were responsible, or at least 20 hands were dirty. Um, I think the bigger question is how many of those hands are still there?
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm.
no idea. Uh, like how many? I'd have to look this up, but like how many assistant coaches, members of the staff, percentage of the players are still with the Broncos this year than they were last year? Did they have an impact? I don't know. But who really does know? But I thought that was just like a funny quote. It's really funny that these two teams don't really have like a rivalry, and so
Uh-uh.
it's like nothing really to do with each other at all. And so like the fact that Sean Payton is just throwing the Jets under the bus, not under the bus, but he is saying that what they're doing is bad, or at least that's what he's implying. And they also, just to add, not just to add kind of salt on to the entire situation, they do play each other week 5.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I think they play in Denver. I don't know if it's I think it's just like a normal Sunday game. I don't think it's like a primetime game or anything, but they do play week 5. And so that was kind of Robert Sala's response, being like, well, we must be doing something right if they're talking about us and we don't play until, I think he said week 4, but they do play week 5, which again is just funny. Um, but
It,
do you have anything else to add on that? I know, I'm sorry, I'm rambling a lot
oh
here.
no, you're fine. It's really going to be a test to see whether or not Sean Payton was right. I mean, he's coming in and he's kind of at a pivotal point, at a pivotal moment in the Broncos franchise. I mean, they haven't been Jack in a while, and this feels like
Since Peyton.
yeah, exactly. This feels like a glimmer of hope for the franchise, And then the Jets, I feel like they're they're seeing 2020, hindsight's 2020. I think they see a future in where they're going. So yeah, I feel like there's going to be a lot to talk about with this game. I
Are
mean,
you a Jets believer this year? Just getting your thought. Like, are you someone who's like buying into the hype, or are you someone who's kind of fading them? Just as a random
there's
follow up.
such a question mark for me. I want to say yes, but just knowing Jets historically, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But then on the other hand, I see the Broncos, and historically they've been probably above average. So I mean, they do have some rings, and recently they've had some rings. But yeah, I want to say that I don't want to say they'll be better than the Jets, but I feel like they they kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I'm still on limbo about the Jets, if I'm being honest with you. Just as like a random aside, I am a Vikings fan. I have a flag behind me. I am a Vikings fan. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers guy. I mean, I respect him as a player, but I don't like him. But um, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Um, I do think he'll be better than he was last year. I
Agree.
think there was some credence to the thumb injury that was reported, I think, after the season, or at least during the season. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I do think there was some credence to that. But also at the same time, I don't know how much better the weapons the Jets have outside of, I guess, Garrett Wilson than the Packers did during their, at least not last season. I mean, obviously, I think Garrett Wilson would be the best receiver on the Packers last year. Like if you were to just like kind of just insert him there, I think without question he is. But like bringing it over Eric or Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb was a little bit confusing to me, if I'm being honest. I don't know how much that offensive line's better than Green Bay. I think it's worse actually. And then also like defense. I mean, both defenses were good. And so it's just it's also like the AFC is just tougher than the NFC, and so I'm still a little bit on limbo against with the Jets and like where they stand. I think they'll probably win 8-9 games. I don't know if you follow Warren Sharp, but he does like a lot of football like analytical stuff. But he has this thing where he calculates like rest advantages versus disadvantages, and the Jets are a team that have a lot of rest advantage, meaning they have more rest than their opponents in certain weeks. And I think they have like the most rest advantage weeks in like the entire league this year. And so, or at least it's either the most or like close to the most. I can't remember exactly how much, but that is just something to take into account. They also, again, they do play in the AFC East with the Dolphins, who are a good team, with the Bills, who might win the division and are a Super Bowl contender. Pretty much they have been the last couple of seasons. And so it's like they do play in a tough division. I do think they have a tough schedule as well. And so that's just something to keep an eye on. But that's just a random follow-up question.
So I myself am a Falcons fan, and I've been watching these Sean Payton offenses. So I'm kind of doing the same thing as you. Everything's just a question mark for me.
The AFC's tough, man. Like it's hard to – like in the NFC, it's hard to come up with 7 playoff teams.
Yeah, it's crazy.
With the AFC, it's like there's 8 or 9 or 10 that you could choose from. And it's like, all right, who's going to be kind of on the outside looking in by the end of this? And the Jets are absolutely one of those teams. I mean, I guess like the Bengals are a surefire team. The Bills are probably a surefire team. Like obviously, you'll know more into the season with like injuries and stuff like that. That kind of sets itself in that regard. But like as of right now, like we don't know what the Jets are going to look like. I mean, obviously Zach Wilson was there last year and they were bad, or they still won like 8 or 9 games, but Zach Wilson's bad. So the Jets this year now have Aaron Rodgers, who was a 2-time MVP and I think 4-time for his career.
So with Aaron Rodgers reducing his contract, do you think over time they're going to just give him all the pieces he needs, or do you think it'll be kind of like Packers 2.0 where they don't really give him a receiver?
I think they'll try to. I think they'll try to. it's more of a question. Like, I don't think his contract, I would have to look it up, but I don't think his contract was like enormous when he was in Green Bay. It was just the front office didn't want to get him receivers, and or at least like young budding receiver. I mean, they drafted Romeo Dobbs, my guy. But other than that, like it wasn't. I mean, they got Christian Watson as well, who is budding in his own respect. But they didn't get. I don't think they helped him enough offensively. But like their defense was always like really good too. Like, I mean, last year I think it was either last year or 2 years ago. It took a little bit of a step back than it was relative to preseason expectation. But like the talent's there. And so that's why it's like when he comes with the Jets, I don't think that the Jets defense is drastically better, if at all better, than it was when he was in Green Bay. And now, I mean, Rodgers is reunited with Hackett. I do think Joe Douglas will, at least for the couple of years, I think he dropped down to like 2 to 75 or something. I don't remember what the exact contract was, but it did drop a lot. Dropped like 30 million, 35 million. But like, I think they'll try to help it. Also, just the NFL salary cap is weird, and so you're still going to have to restructure contracts. You're still going to have to finagle with the cap to at least put yourself in the best position to acquire free agents. But I guess we'll probably figure that out in the coming off seasons, or at least as long as Rodgers is there.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's really. I always wonder why he picked the Jets, and I know he has the Hackett connection, but yeah, that's a tough division. He was always winning in your division. I'm sorry, but
other than last year, yeah,
yeah, other than last year, yeah, but yeah, he's got a lot more competition.
Yeah. There's a couple other things from just throughout this week. I mean, okay, as I mentioned earlier, Dalvin Cook. I mean, came out today. He's visiting with the Jets over the weekend. There is, I want to say the word would use in the report was high possibility that he could sign, or at least that he has interest. It's rumored to be at top of his list. I thought that was interesting because I mean, there's been a lot of smoke with obviously the Dolphins because he's from Florida. He went to Florida State, and so that was always kind of like the number one, at least not the number one option, but it was like the most. He was linked to the Dolphins the most. And I think he probably showed some, like he was pretty open about showing some interest about going there. I mean, obviously when they asked Mike McDaniel like a month back or whenever that interview was, he kind of brushed it to the side, as most coaches do. But there's also been some, like I've seen some like Patriot smoke about him wanting to go there. I don't know how true those reports are, but he's visiting the Jets this weekend. So like, what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like Dalvin makes the most sense in Miami. However, I feel like he's got a better future in New York with the Jets. I feel like both teams are piecing together what they think is everything they need to get to the playoffs and then some. But I think he'll have more success in, now that I think about it, he'll have some running back competition in New York and probably share the snaps a little more than if he were to go to Miami.
I think he's going to regardless.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would regardless because it's like how old is he? Like he's 20. He's coming up on 30 soon. I think he's 28, 27, 28. He's going to be 28 soon. He's going to be 28 in August. But I mean, at least in today's day and age with running backs, especially older running backs, you have it's running back by committee. And so I think he would be more beneficiary, just personally, I think he'd be more beneficiary in the Dolphins offense because of how Mike McDaniel would be able to use him as kind of like a gadget running back and use him to his advantage. I don't know how much Hackett would be able to do that, but I do think there'd be a case where he would get a higher snap share in New York. But who is it? Is Breece Hall still there, right? He's their number one guy right now. I'm
blanking. Yeah, he's still there.
Okay, so yeah, like no, maybe I think. Like I think regardless, it's like kind of this is a bad comparison, but like Melvin Gordon in Denver, like he's not gonna get he's gonna get some of the snaps, but he's not going to get everything. And there's still like I was a little down on Dalvin. I mean, I know he rushed for nearly 1,200 yards last year and he had 8 touchdowns. He's still a good running back for sure. But I was a little bit down on like it felt like he lost some explosiveness, at least in between the tackles a little bit. I mean, obviously in space he's still an electric player and he still is very agile. But I think he's lost a little bit of juice. Again, it's not negligible, but it's not like something drastic. You know, it's he's still going to be an impactful running back wherever he goes. And I think he would especially enhance his ability with the Dolphins. I think more so than the Jets, but he's also gets to play with Aaron Rodgers, and like that's a pretty cool opportunity objectively, and be used in that way. And it's like Rodgers has had success with running backs in the past with Aaron Jones, with AJ Dillon, and so is Tua, at least early in his career. But I just find the Jets thing to be a little interesting. Maybe it's a leverage play. I don't know.
I mean, in New York, he'd probably catch quite a few passes as well. He wouldn't just be a rushing back. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like he fits out there. I think the 3 teams we named are really the only places I see him going, though. I feel like every team is somewhat set with what they have. I was just trying to brainstorm a few other teams and couldn't really come up with anywhere else I could see him going.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the one that just popped into my head for really no reason other than I'm not worried about the running back depth, but I'm just curious like how that's going to transpire. It's probably Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just one that I don't think there's been any smoke with that. I have no idea. I haven't seen it at least, but like Tony Pollard's now your number 1 guy.
I'm a believer in him too.
So am I, but like there's so many teams nowadays that just go running back by committee and for good reason. And it's like he's without question the number 1 guy. I mean, I'm trying to think of like who else. Like, I don't think just a couple other ones that popped into mind was Baltimore for really no reason. Playing with Lamar would be cool. But like maybe Cincinnati. I'm just thinking of like teams that like I'm not worried about like the running back depth. I mean, I think what P. Ryan left in the offseason, he signed with Denver. Now that I think about it, I can't remember exactly though.
I think he did go to Denver. You're right. Yeah.
One that like I'm just looking at like the teams right here just to get an idea. Like just another one that popped into mind, even though I don't think they would use him as much as like maybe Detroit.
Yeah, I think all they have is Jahmyr Gibbs, right, from out of Alabama. He's a rookie.
There's someone else that David Montgomery. That's who they signed. I knew I was blanking on, because I was like they added a running back outside of Gibbs. Maybe if Montgomery didn't sign there, he could have been an option. I mean, obviously, if Saquon held out, the Giants would be a good option. I mean, yeah. Probably just the Jets. I mean, I don't know what Dalvin would make, because I mean, we've seen how running backs get paid nowadays, and to some extent, rightfully so, because they're just not as valuable as they used to be with the type of offenses that are in the league and with how much they get beaten up. I mean, I'm guessing if Dalvin signed today, he'd probably make $4 to $5 million. Just a 1 year. Here's $4 million. You can still get 150, 200 carries. Possibly, you can still get plenty of snaps out of the backfield. Again, I don't think it's going to be as much as it was in Minnesota. I could be wrong. At least at this stage of his career. I also like the injury thing. Like, he has had knee injuries in the past, so I don't think teams would want to risk that. But if you're a team like the Dolphins, you can move him around and enhance his abilities a little bit. So that would just I think that would be my favorite destination for him is Miami. And I think again, that's been the obvious one because
Mhm.
of the hometown connection. But the Dolphins might not be a team that's in the running now, or at least again they might be in a bidding war with the Jets. Who knows? Also, bidding war for running back just sounds stupid now that I'm saying it. At least today's
Yeah,
day and age, but soon to be 28-year-old bidding for running back. Yeah.
right.
But who knows?
You can do that with a quarterback, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Running back would be a little bit tougher.
Mhm.
Um, what are some other like training camp stuff that like just caught your eye, at least over the last couple of days? It doesn't have to be anything super recent, but
I've been seeing some Calvin Ridley film, and I feel like he's been one of the biggest question marks. Nobody knows how he's gonna play because he's had a year off. So, but the film I've seen, he looks like he hasn't missed a beat. I feel like he could be a dangerous weapon.
especially with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson,
Mhm.
it's better than what he had in Atlanta, at least towards the end.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they had like one good year out of Matt Ryan's like end of his career. Uh, and
Well, he had the MVP season.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was like 2016, 2017, something like that.
yeah. But even then, Julio was getting most of the targets. So
That's right. I was trying to think of like Wade was really even on that team. I think he was, but he was a young receiver. You're right.
Calvin Ridley might. I think he's maybe the number one because their number one last season was Christian Kirk, and
Right.
he was a number three in Arizona 2 years ago. So
Right.
I think Calvin Ridley might get most of the targets. Just depends on how they connect, though.
I mean, I think they'll connect well. Um, Kind of to your point, I think he will lead the team in targets. I mean, they also have Evan Ingram, who just signed an extension with them. I think like either last weekend or 2 weekends ago. But he recently signed an extension. Um, and so it's like they have weapons now. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are probably the runaway favorites to win the AFC South. I mean, I don't see Indianapolis doing anything.
Mhm.
They're just in a bad division. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see no disrespect. I don't see. Wait, no, the Falcons are in the NFC South. What am I thinking?
Oh yeah. No worries. They're close regionally. No, yeah. No.
Yeah, I was like, wait. I always get those. I for some reason I get the South mixed up.
Yeah,
Like,
they're all just bunched in there.
yeah,
Like I feel like the Falcons should play the Jaguars more often, just based on geography.
I've seen like tweets about. I swear I saw a tweet like a couple weeks ago about like this guy created a model and he did like a geographic model of like what like a new division, like a division realignment, what it would look like. And I don't remember what it was exactly for the South, but I remember for the North it was like Minnesota and like Cleveland or like some shit like that. And I'm just like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
Uh,
that'd be kind of
not that I really cared that much, but I mean, I just think that stuff is like interesting because I don't know what went behind it, but I wish I
no,
could find it
totally.
right now. I don't think I could find it, but
I mean, I feel like a lot of the divisions do make sense geographically, and a lot of the matchups just kind of make sense. I don't know because I've just been watching them play for so long.
yeah,
But there are a couple outliers, like
Dallas.
yeah, Dallas, and then Miami has to go up north for all their games. They
Yeah.
they never get snow, and then they play in Foxborough or something. It's weird. Yeah.
Well, there's some other ones too that I'm just trying to think of like off the top of my head. Um,
I do know.
Indianapolis.
Oh yeah, like I wouldn't really consider them the South.
No,
Yeah. But I
no.
know I know the NFL's been through at least one division realignment because I know with expansion teams, they kind of started off in a weird spot. Like I remember the Seahawks used to be in the Broncos division, and that was kind of bizarre. And then the Niners, Rams, Falcons, and Saints used to be in a division, and that was also super weird.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of realignment, I mean, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but we could probably touch over a little bit. Colorado is moving to the Big 12.
That's
Um,
It's really going to be like a tale of three conferences now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just also find it funny how of all Pac-12 teams, Colorado is the one that moves to the Big 12. I mean, they used to be in the Big 12 up until like 2011. They moved over to the Pac-12 not too long ago, or at least in like 2011, 2012, whenever that, and they've been there ever since. I mean, the football program has been a disaster, and I think Dion over time could change that. I don't think Dion might be there for he I think he's trying to get to Florida State at least at some point, at least in that region, but I think he will do a decent job with that football program. Maybe not this year, but in future seasons. But I just find it funny how of all Big 12 teams, they're the ones that go over, not Washington, not I mean, there's been discussion. I don't know how much you followed it, but there's been discussion of like Arizona, and Arizona State.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I don't know how much that will open up for like the Pac-12, or at least people are calling them the Pac-9 now that USC and UCLA have moved out, or at least they will, I believe, next year. But I don't know what that means for like the future of college football. I mean, college football realignment is such a shit show now, anyways. There's just realignment happening all over the place, and I think Colorado still has to give their letter of like release, or I think whatever it's called, to the Pac-12 before they officially move conferences. But like, I don't think if Dion wasn't there, I personally don't think Colorado moves to the Big 12, at least like in the coming season, or like in a couple of seasons, whenever that's supposed to transpire. So, I mean, I find that to be a little bit funny. I think he does have some influence it, even though he is kind of downplaying a little bit. At least that's how he's downplaying it to the media. I mean, the basketball program, I don't know how much you follow college basketball, but the basketball program is like, it's not terrible.
Decent, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I looked at it this morning. I think they have like 8 20 win seasons in like the 12 years they were in the Pac-12. And so like they've been successful. They've made like 5 NCAA tournaments. They're fairly successful, not a flashy, but they're fairly successful Pac-12 school. I mean, I know the Pac-12 does get shit from the basketball side of things. I mean, it probably gets more shit from the football side of things now that I'm saying it out loud. But now they're going to the toughest conference, at least in basketball. The Big 12 is the best college basketball conference, and now they're going to the toughest conference there. But just something to brush over. Anything else? And I mean, at least if you want to give your thoughts on that, or is there anything like else NFL wise that you want to go over?
Well, to touch on the conference realignment and all that, it's kind of unfortunate that it works this way in college football.
Yeah,
I think what CU is trying to do is basically rebuild, and you don't hear that word very often in college football. But I think their logic is, hey, we got a new coach. Now let's get our recruiting even more up by switching conferences. Because in the NFL, when you rebuild, you just hash out money, but you can't do that in college. So what do? They just go to a more competitive conference. And I feel like it kind of throws the balance off, it just, the Pac-12 or Pac-9 isn't going to feel the same anymore. The Big 12, like, some teams just aren't going to feel like they belong. And I mean, even like UCLA and USC joining the Big 10, that's so weird to me. I feel like it should be regional there too, kind of like how we were talking with NFL divisions,
It's the money, man. It's the TV money. And like, there's been questions about, I don't think they've formally signed a new TV deal for the Pac-12 yet. I think it expires, maybe the end of this year, maybe the end of next year. Like, it expires soon if it hasn't already. And they've been in negotiation with that for like a year. And with the uncertainty with UCLA and USC leaving, with the uncertainty with the rest of the conference, I don't think that's probably the reason why, or one of the bigger reasons why a TV deal hasn't gotten done yet. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're going to be making, I don't know what the exact money is. I would have to look it up, but the Big 12 is more than the Pac-12, or at least it probably will be more than the Pac-12. And it's obviously more teams. And so I think how conferences do it is like they equally disperse the money. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that. But like also like Cincinnati and UCF and Houston, like they all just joined the Big 12. And so it's now I don't know, there's like 13 teams now, 13, 14, whatever the number is. If this becomes, I mean, it's practically become official already. Again, Colorado just has to give their letter of notice, but it's the TV money. And it's like Colorado, it's not like Colorado has built up like rivalries or like incredible rivalries in the Pac-12. I mean, I know I looked it up a couple days ago. They do have like a couple, like Utah is like kind of a rivalry that was mainly a rivalry like back in like this like the 60s and 70s, because I think they were like both like highly touted programs then. But like their biggest rival is not in their conference. Colorado State's probably their biggest rival, and they're in the Mountain West. They're in my Mountain West, but they're in the Mountain West. And so that's not it really moved to the Big 12. Again, it's just like it's a more competitive conference from at least a football perspective, especially after USC and UCLA leave. And so, but it's just it's the TV money.
Do you see Colorado developing a rivalry, or do you think they're just kind of going to float on through the conference?
There was another. I think they have one with Nebraska, but they're in the Big Ten now. That I think about it.
Yeah, no, that they were a rivalry back when they were both in the Big 12, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, now they hardly ever play each other.
I mean, there might be some. Let me look at like just the Big 12 teams just to refresh myself, because again,
The hard thing
how many
about
teams moving around? I have no idea who's where half the time.
I have a feeling that their new rival will become like an Oklahoma State, because Oklahoma's leaving them. So
Yeah,
I guess maybe Colorado will try to fill in, get blown out for a couple years, and then maybe when their recruiting's up, they'll have a couple good games.
BYU regional,
Ooh, yeah, I forgot about BYU.
regional.
I like that. Yeah,
I have
that's
no idea. We're just spitting. We're spitballing here.
no, yeah,
No
exactly.
idea.
We don't really know how it's going to hash out, but it's I could see it happening. It's fun to talk about, you know.
Because that's part of the reason why, like, I don't love conference realignment. Is because it gets rid of some of the like important rivalries, like when A&M moved to the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
They're not playing Texas as often. They're not playing, even though it may not be as big of a rival. I'm not sure, but they're not playing Texas Tech as often. Like when the conference realignment happens, it gets rid of some of those rivalries, because it's like you're only limited to so many non-conference games once you move on. And like these bigger conferences, well, now you're going to be playing 3 non-conference games as opposed to some conferences where you play 4. So it's like you're leaving out room here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like when you're playing in the same conference, you're competing for the same title, same conference title. And when you're playing most, if not every season, depending on how big your conference is and depending on like if you have divisions or not, then it makes it a lot more fun than if it's like, okay, yeah, I'm playing this team in state, but I'm only playing them once every 4 years or something like that. You know, like it doesn't feel the same, I guess, anymore. And there's some like some of the smaller conferences, they do play their interstate rivals no matter what. Like I believe New Mexico plays New Mexico State every year. Does anyone give a shit about that outside of New Mexico? Probably not. But it's still like there's some level of I guess rivalry in that respect, even though they're two group of 5 programs, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when they're not in the same conference, it doesn't mean as much anyways. Even if they are playing each other, they might have that rivalry, but it doesn't mean as much because it doesn't really have contention other than just another win on your record. It doesn't mean anything for your conference standings or
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just bragging rights.
Mm-hmm. And most of the time, I feel like when they're not in the same conference, they don't share like a cup that they give to the winner, you know? Yeah, so college football, I feel, is really built on rivalries. If we ever get to a time where Michigan and Ohio State split up, or Auburn, Alabama.
Don't float that in the air.
Yeah, forget I ever said anything.
No, but go on. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh no, you're fine. Just if like a real staple college rivalry gets split up, I think it's going to get hard to watch. Honestly, like
Yeah,
uh, I tune into like I have no affiliation to Ohio State or Michigan, and I watch that probably every year.
me too.
It, it, it,
Me too. I
it,
have no affiliation with that at all. But yeah,
mhm.
no, I'm. It's
It-
still like one of like the most like one of the football games that I look to most, at least in the college season every year.
yeah, if it goes away, I mean, college football will just never be the same.
Yeah, and
I don't think they've missed that game for well over 100 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like it's similar to also like it's on a lower scale, but one I also look forward to. I mean, there's a couple I look forward to. Um, one because I have some family involved, but like one of them that I know of that I don't follow too closely, but like the Egg Bowl
Hmm.
with Mississippi and Mississippi State, the Apple Cup with Washington and Washington State. Like those are interconference rivalries, and
Totally.
also like interstate rivalries. And it's like that means something to those fan bases, and especially since they play in the same conference. Um, so
That that's why.
especially Mississippi State because it's like it's the South.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You know more. You could attest to it more than I could, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if one of them moves, they both have to move. So I feel like that's why it's a good thing that UCLA and USC win as a package deal. But I mean, Texas and Oklahoma moving around doesn't make too much sense to me. I know they have a. I'm blanking on the name of their game, but I mean, they're not like each other's sole rivals. I feel like Bedlam, Oklahoma State is probably a bigger rivalry. Maybe for Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, I guess they probably have their bouts with Texas year in and year out. But I guess my point ultimately is if you leave your conference, you better take your rival with you because you may hate them, but you kind of need them.
right,
Yeah.
right. Is there anything else on like the NFL side of things?
Um, Not that I can think of. We touched on the big injuries: Sean Payton, Aaron Rodgers, Dalvin Cook. Um, we even hit Bryce Young earlier. Uh, yeah, I don't know if I have anything. Do you have anything?
No, no. Just to brush over. I mean, we're at kind of at like a dead point in the NBA offseason. I mean, there's not a whole lot of news that's been coming out. There's not a whole lot of free agency signings. A lot of that's kind of slowed down. Uh, since this is your second time, we talked before, this is your second time on the Daily Show. Were you on before free agency? During free agency? Like, when were you last on?
It was back in like, I want to say early mid June. It
Okay,
was
so
actually it was right after the finals. It was right after the finals.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So you still have free agency takes to get off your chest, I'm assuming. Or at
Yeah,
least
yeah, a little bit. I mean, uh, I'm drawing a blank
it's been
right
a
now,
while.
to be honest. Yeah, yeah. I haven't thought about the NBA in a while. For some reason, the only team I have in my head is I loved the Rockets draft. I loved their draft, and I don't think they signed. Did they sign anybody? I don't even remember.
Well, I mean, they got Van Vliet, Dylan Brooks,
Oh, that's right.
Jock.
Oh my gosh! Wow. I was thinking about them.
For a lot of money,
Yeah.
for
Wow.
several $1 million.
Okay. I mean, I like Van Fleet. The Dylan Brooks signing. Who knows? I mean, I don't know what to think of him. I feel like you like him if he's on your team. Maybe. I I don't know. He'll help out defensively. I'll say that much.
Well, I mean, the Rockets did, or not the Rockets, the Grizzlies did say we're bringing you back under no circumstance at
Yeah,
all. So maybe they don't like him as much as we think, but
yeah. I think he did kind of screw them over in the end. He got
a little
LeBron
bit.
angry. Like that's something you don't do.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I think maybe if he doesn't run his mouth so much and just does his job, he might be a good pickup for the Rockets.
They also got Jeff Green,
Oh, that's right.
1 year, I think
Yeah.
6 million.
Yeah.
Uh,
Is he gonna start?
no,
I don't. Okay, I was gonna say because like the Rockets went from nothing to having high draft picks and then a few signings. There's no way Jeff Green gets in like at the beginning of
I
the game.
think he'll get rotation minutes at some point.
Yeah.
He's the veteran. He's a veteran, and
Hmm.
it's like I've talked about this with Bagdonis and Jerry Walker. I talked about it in our NBA chat a little bit. Like I think the Rockets will be better because they have obviously Ime Udoka, who he's like the professor that'll just slap the ruler on the table if you're screwing around. Like he's that type of guy, but he's also has the command and the respect of his players that he's at least that he had in Boston. I mean, you could like the players loved him, or at least from what I know, the players all really liked him, even though he was that kind of hard ass. And he'll probably not. He's not going to make friends per
Yeah.
se,
Hmm.
at least at the start. But he's a guy who's a no nonsense disciplinarian type figure that Houston needed. It felt like, I mean, yeah, Steven Silas was. I mean, I felt kind of bad for Steven Silas because of the situation that he was in, but he wasn't a good coach, at least a good head coach, at least in his first head coaching stint. Um, like I think that's fair to say, and he was always someone who was very vocal about like not want like these guys aren't playing defense, these guys aren't doing this, that, and the other thing, but he wasn't really doing much about it as like a coach.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
Ime Udoka will be that type of figure. And with the fact that you are bringing in a guy like Fred VanVleet, who again, who's not going to beat around the bush. Dillon Brooks is that another very good defensive culture center. I mean, this team was one of the worst defensive teams in the league last year. And he comes in and he's one of the, even though as much shit as Dillon Brooks gets as like a player and like his antics or whatever the case is, he's legitimately good. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And so I think he'll absolutely help in that respect. But you also bring in like a veteran like Jeff Green, who again, like Jeff Green's been around the block. And so again, when these guys are like Houston was a team last year, it felt like they didn't have leadership. It didn't feel like they had a direction. Well, now they have that. And so I think they will be a better team. I don't know how much better, but I think they will be one of the more improved teams throughout the league. I think
Agreed.
I
Yeah.
think they'll win 30 to 35 games. Like Jalen Green now has a guy who can set the table for him and Fred VanVleet. He now has guys to pick pieces of advice from. It felt like even like when Eric Gordon was there by himself, Eric Gordon's just like, dude, I want to get the hell out of here, bro. Like this is like there was just not like there was not the leadership that they needed. Now I think they have multiple guys, including their head coach, who is not going to take shit from anyone.
Mm-mm.
Like he was in Boston with Jason Brown and Jalen Tatum and Marcus Smart. He was the biggest asshole, but it was like a good. It was, excuse my language, by the way, but like
Oh, no,
he
you're
was a
fine.
good. He did it in a good way. Like it wasn't like it's not like it was like a toxic culture or whatever. Like he did it in like a good motivational way. I think we saw a little bit of that get taken away from Boston this last year, but nevertheless,
Yeah, yeah, there's a level of hard assery that you can get away with before the players don't want to play for you, you know?
right.
It, it's like building them up. It's like tough love, but building them up, you
It
know?
is tough. It is exactly that's exactly what it is, and much more in layman's terms, it's tough love.
Hmm.
And it's like Ime, when he was in Boston, allowed them to play freely offensively, and he preached to them like move the ball and like don't be selfish. And that's exactly again something that Houston needs because they were the exact opposite last year. And when they did F up defensively, Boston, when they did F up defensively, and they did make a mistake or two or whatnot, like, it's tough love. Ime would show him the tough love, and he wouldn't be afraid to correct that and get that out of him. And it does take a certain type of player to take that constructive criticism and then build from that instead of fold. And I'm sure at some point we're going to see something throughout the season with some player on Houston, some young guy. Again, I don't think it's not going to be all like gloomy there. It's not going to be all like sunshine and roses, like it's at some point there will be a breaking point, perhaps, but it's like, again, it takes a certain type of player, a certain type of culture that you need to have in an organization and in a team to get over that and to build from that moment and not shrink and fold. And you got to have mental toughness in this league, whether you're number 13 on the bench or whether you're the best player in the league or top 5 player in the league. Like, you need to have mental fortitude in professional basketballs, professional sports in general, but professional basketball as well. It's included in that. And someone who will test that is Ime Udoka, and for the right reasons, I think. And I think that will help Houston in the short term and in the long term.
Agreed. I'm excited to see how they mesh together and if it's going to create a similar culture to Boston or something like that. And yeah, I think they have a bright future. It may take a couple years, but
yeah,
I only see them going up.
Yeah, I mean, the West is just hard.
Mm-hmm.
The West is loaded with teams. And I remember in our NBA Slack chat a couple weeks ago, I posed the question to Chickster, or who are our resident Spurs/Raiders fan, and I asked him, like, can the Spurs win 30 plus games? And if so, like, usually the math, how the NBA works is the math doesn't always, like, you could project all these teams to be higher or better, whatever the case is, but that's just not ultimately how it is, because someone's got to be bad. Someone's got to be the 15th seed. Someone's got to be the 14th seed. Like, that's just how this works. Someone's got to lose 55, 60 games. That's just how this math works. But, like, I was trying to pinpoint teams specifically in the West that I think were going to be considerably worse than they were last year, or what they're projected to be. And the one team that I could come up with for pretty obvious reasons is Portland, because of, like, they might trade Damian Lillard. Sure, they'll get a good haul back for him, but I still think they're going to win 25 games. But, like, I don't think Houston will be one of those teams. But, like, other than that, it was like, is Dallas going to have another unfortunate season, even though I like what they've done this offseason? They drafted Olivier Maxence Prosper, who I was high on pre-draft. They did acquire Grant Williams. They did just get better defensively and at the positions they needed to get better at. They did re-sign Kyrie Irving again. Are the Pelicans, like, it's the Zion question. What's that going to look like? They're a good team on paper. I don't love what they've done this offseason, but they were the top seed in the West before Zion got hurt, or they were one of the top seeds in the West. So in theory, they should be good, assuming he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The Thunder won 40 games last year, and they get Chet Holmgren back. How's that going to help? The Minnesota Timberwolves, they battled injuries after injury after injury, specifically to two of their best 3 players. Really, they're one of their best players in Karl Anthony Towns. For as much shit that he gets, he's still a good basketball player, even though the contract probably isn't great and even the fit isn't great with he and Rudy Gobert. But, like, they still won 42 games. They still finished above 500, and they were 9th in the West. The Los Angeles Lakers got better, and they won 43 games. Like, who's going to get substantially worse? And that's something that I've been thinking about. And so maybe Houston is that team again. Like, maybe they are the 15th seed or the 13th or 14th or whatever that it is. They only win 30 to 35 games. They might show, like, more camaraderie and more, like, they might show more of a direction, kind of like what we're talking about. But, like, who's going to be considerably worse outside of Portland? Are the Clippers going to be worse? who knows? I mean, again, we'll know more about this stuff with injuries and that stuff during the season. But it's just something to think about. Are the Spurs going to be the 15th seed again? Are they going to be just bad, even though they got Victor Wembanyama, even though they did take on a couple of bad contracts, but how's that going to shape out? Like, that's why I kind of posed the question to Chickster, like, who's going to win 30 games? Are they going to win 30 games? I'm sorry, I'm rambling. But.
Oh no, you're fine. It's always so hard to call before the season. I mean, we all think like, I mean, ultimately, no one ever knows how it's going to end up. You can have a pretty good guess about it, but when you see every team adding pieces, you want to assume they're all going to win more, but that's just not how math works. So,
Correct.
yeah, ultimately, if every team's adding pieces, it might look a lot similar to last year. Just every team has their guy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just also just a testament to how this league works, because there's talent everywhere. And I know Kevin Durant had a quote a couple days ago about there could be like 4 or 5 expansion teams. It's like there's, I don't know if that many would exist, and I don't know where outside of like Vegas they would have these teams, but the league is as talented as it's ever been, and just based on recent trends, it's only going to go up. And so, like, there's fun players, at least in my opinion, on every team, at least one.
Oh, definitely.
They may not be all they may not all be conducive to team success, but just like as basketball players, you could be like, oh, okay, like that's kind of a fun player, whether he's a role player, starter, superstar, whatever. But I know we're at the hour 7 mark. Is there anything else that you wanna touch on or add?
I don't have much, to be honest with you.
One thing, or at least one more thing that I wanted to briefly touch over, there was something the other day that came out about Houston and San Antonio. They almost offered Austin Reeves an offer sheet. They were in position to. They both had plenty of cap space too, and so I just thought that's something that I don't think we've talked about, or at least has been talked about on the Daily Show, that I want to brush over, just because I mean he was the Lakers' third best player last year in the playoffs, or at least arguably. He was, and heading into the offseason, he was a restricted free agent. He was succumbed to the arenas provision. And so he was one of those free agents where that Lakers could only offer so much before another team with cap space could just completely screw him over. And I just thought it was interesting how even into the second day of free agency, the Spurs nor the Rockets nor any other team with cap space was willing to kind of bloat that offer sheet for the Lakers to make it a little more interesting. We didn't get any parity in that respect, and it disappoints me. But just something that I want to just brush over a little bit. I mean, again, the Lakers ultimately re-signed him. It's kind of a non-story at this point, but I just found it interesting how those were the two teams, unsurprisingly, linked to him just because they had so much cap space, and they almost offered him an offer sheet. I wish they would have, again, for more parity, but they wanted to preserve cap space, or at least in the Rockets instance, they wanted to wait whether Fred VanVleet would sign, and if not, then they would just offer this completely bloated offer sheet, but they didn't. So,
Yeah, I mean, when you see a young player play like the way Austin Reeves did last season, I would have expected at least a couple teams to just run to him and say, "Hey, here's a bunch of money. We want you to be our guy."
right.
And I think they kind of had faith in their offseason. I don't think there's a lot more to it. They saw other things. I think Austin Reeves fits really well in LA, though. I
I
think
do too.
there could be quite a future there. He was lighting it up in the playoffs.
No, I do. I do too. I do too. I mean, the thing with the Lakers with this contract was like, even if it was such a just complete, like if the most a team was able to offer was around 102 million over 4, but like if a team did offer that or close to that, the Lakers would still be in a position to where they could re-sign him, because I don't think they have anyone on the books for 25, 26. And so like they still could have re-signed him albeit you would have Austin Reeves on your books for 30 plus million.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, I think, 37 and 25, 26, and then 39 the year after. Or at least that, like if it was the max amount of money that a team could offer, that would have been those two figures. So I don't know if the Lakers would have wanted to do that, but also at the same time, like teams also run the risk of, guess what, if I give this guy an 80 million offer sheet and he doesn't accept it, or at least the Lakers don't match, or like you'd offer that he accepts it, the Lakers don't match, well, then guess what? He's now on my books for 20 million per, or whatever that average annual value number would be. And so that's just the risks of teams. And now with restricted free agency with the new CBA, it's you have 24 hours to match it, and instead of 48. And so it gives the Lakers may have been a little bit more reluctant to match that contract, especially after they signed Gabe Vincent, they signed Taurean Prince. They got a number of these guys already in free agency, and he was one of their last pieces to sign, him being Reeves. So I just thought that was interesting. But again, they were able to lock him up before any team was, had an evil plan to put together to give him some like, oh, here's 4 for 90, dude.
Yeah.
Make the Lakers match it. But then again, if they don't, now we're tied to him.
Yeah, that would have been quite a pull for a team to just basically mortgage him or something,
Mortgage more salary cap space.
Yeah, exactly. I guess we have quite a bit of a future in LA for him then. How much longer is he there for? I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
4 years.
4 years?
It was 4 for 54, just about.
Okay. Well, I don't mind.
Pretty cheap money, especially if the cap continues to go up by 10%.
Yeah. I don't mind seeing him in a Lakers jersey. He kind of fits. I like seeing him out there, and honestly, wherever he is, I just kind of like his game. I'm just excited to see him play more. I
did too. I was pretty high on him. Not at least I didn't think he was going to get drafted, but I liked him out of Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think he was going to be this good a player already, but like he's, again, a good shot creator. He knows how to get to the free throw line. He knows how to play off the ball with LeBron James, and that's important if you want to play with LeBron James, or at least on the same team. You got to know how to play off the ball. And regardless if I think the ball in his hands or not, I think he's still a good player. I think he's worth that money. And again, it's similar to mid-level money, so it's pretty inexpensive from the Lakers standpoint, at least in the short term and in the long term. So
it's good to see him his money though. He deserves it.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything else that I have in mind, if I'm being honest with you. In the old daily shows, Bogdanis and I would go like 2.5 hours, 2+ hours, and I don't think Trey liked that very much.
No kidding.
Perfectly understandable. I'm annoying, so.
No, this is a good hour-long show, that's for sure. I think it's more of a deal with the viewer, the viewer might not have 2.5 hours on their hands.
I know. Also, something that hasn't been talked about yet on the Daily Show. I know Trey and Jackson released their they did a cheese episode that came out, I believe, this morning or last night. I don't remember the exact date. But Newsbreak, the Vendetta Sports Media is now on Newsbreak. So go download the Newsbreak app. Go follow the Vendetta Sports Media page. The outreach, as Trey mentioned with Jackson, is as big as it's ever been. And it's only going to continue growing. I don't think that's been talked about yet on the Daily Show. That needs to be discussed. That needs to be said. Please go follow us on Newsbreak. Newsbreak has like 50 million users. And now Vendetta Sports Media, now that we have a deal with Newsbreak, we are on there. You can find all of our stuff on there, all of our articles, all of our link backs, anything at all. All of it's on there. Go follow our Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Go check out the website, vendettasportsmedia.com. Please go check that out. All of our great coverage. The NHL offseason's popping right now. The Major League Baseball trade deadline's next Tuesday, so we have content coming out on that. College football starts in like 4 weeks. college basketball will be coming up November. And so please go check all of that stuff out. The NBA, we're still putting out content on there, even though it's the offseason, even though it's dead. NFL training camp stuff, all of our stuff on there. Please go check out our YouTube pages. I know James just posted something yesterday about Dustin Poirier film study. James does a great job with all UFC content. He's the best out there. Please go check that stuff out. As well as what he does with the best bets, with the recaps, with the predictions on the site, with the news stories. Please go check out all of our MMA, UFC content there. You have a lot of shit going, man. A lot of shit going well. But first, we need to address Newsbreak. Go on Newsbreak. Follow the Vendetta Sports Media page. Like right now, or Drew will find you and make you do it. I'm just kidding.
He said it, not me. Yeah, seriously, check it out though. I mean, we just for more of this. I don't know what I'm saying. My bad. I didn't know my pitch. I didn't know where I was going with that.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
I didn't know how to make a thread or anything, but
oh yeah, go follow us on Threads as well.
Yeah.
Go follow us on X, or at least that's what Elon's calling it nowadays. I just call it Twitter, and we'll always call it Twitter. But go follow us on X. But anyways, thank you for watching. Check us out. Again, please go to the site, follow all of our content. You could find this on there as well as previous daily shows. Go check out the Vendetta YouTube, Vendetta Sports Media Podcast Network, etc., etc. Go check us out on Twitch. I know Trey does a lot of gaming on there. So please go check all that stuff out. We'll see you guys next week. I'll be back on Tuesday with, I don't know if it's Jerry Bagdonis, so you might see me there. I mean, you will see me there. Drew, thank you for doing this, as always.
Thanks for having me. Hey, it's an opportunity to talk about sports, so I can't complain.
Again, see you guys next week.
Yep. Have a good one.